Good evening, 34th District PTA, and welcome to part 3 of a 4-part series about the seasons of PTA. Tonight's presentation will cover all things PTA for the months of January, February, and March. My name is Leslie Powell, and I am the VP of Leadership for 34th District PTA. We are providing these webinars as a way for you to learn more about PTA and to provide a resource for you as you continue your year as a PTA leader. During tonight's presentation, our chat feature will be available for you to use to ask any questions you might have. Volunteers from the 34th District PTA will be monitoring that chat and will provide answers as we go. Tonight, we have information from several of our 34th District PTA board members, including Heather Ippolito, 34th District Parliamentarian, Aaron Hester, 34th District President, Kelly Zephas, 34th District Hospitality Chair, and Amy Garreton, 34th District Historian. Our agenda for today will include a description of what the seasons of PTA are, along with presentations of what you should be focusing on for January, February, and March. And throughout it, you will be able to ask questions in our chat, as I previously said. Without further ado, let's begin our presentation.
Thank you, Leslie. So this is part 3 out of the 4-part series for the seasons of PTA. We have already taken care of summer and fall, and now we are in winter. So we are going to cover some amazing things today, and then spring is going to happen after we come back from winter break. So make sure that you are going to 34thpta.org to get all of the information. You can also go there to find out what you missed in the summer and fall seasons of PTA. All right, so last time when we left, we talked about the nominating committee. So by now, your nominating committee should have already been elected, not selected, elected, and they've advertised for the candidates, and they should have a slate, if not by now, as soon as you come back in January. And the slate is basically the list of candidates based on your bylaws for each of the elected positions. Just to note, remember, chair people don't go on your slate. Those are all appointed by your president after elections have happened. So you need to make sure that your slate is publicized for at least 28 days. Now, usually when we're on campus, that could mean posting it on your PTA bulletin board. You can put it in a newsletter. You can share it on your social media. You can put it on your Facebook page, but it needs to be accessible to all the members of your association for at least 28 days. You also need to let your association know that you're going to be having elections at an upcoming meeting. It is very important for them to be able to come and participate in your elections. So also before your election meeting, you are going to prepare ballots just in case. So we have had folks run from the floor over time at different units. It is not as uncommon as you think. So make sure that you're ready. When we're in person, ballots can be something as simple as little 3x5 cards or Post-it notes or scratched pieces of paper. When we're virtual, it's so much easier to use something like a Google form or a SurveyMonkey or something like that that's easy, that you can drop the link into the Zoom chat for folks to respond to. So just make sure that you have that all up and ready just in case you need to use it. You need to make sure that you invite the candidates and the nominating committee to the election. So make sure that they're all coming. They might not all be able to attend, but make sure that you extend that invitation to them. You also need to have your membership list. This is super important. Before you get to election night, you need to know who's eligible to vote. So you can only be eligible to vote in an election if you have been a PTA member for at least 30 days. So I couldn't join the association tonight and then vote tonight. I have to have 30 days of being a member before I get to vote. So make sure that your membership chair or whoever it is who's in charge of that list, it could be your secretary, has the membership list for the last 30, that from 30 days before your election. Let me say that properly, so that you know who's a member who can vote in your election. And then Presidents, this is really important for you as you are creating your agenda. You need to put elections up top. And here's why. If there is a contested position and you need to have an election with a ballot, that takes time. It takes time to show people how to vote. It takes time to collect the votes, whether it's in person or in that digital space. And you need to give your tellers time to count those votes and come back and report to you. And sometimes you might have to vote more than once. So you need to give ample time for that. So what we suggest is putting it up high in the agenda so that you can go on and do reports and things while the tellers are off doing their job, and then they can come back and report to you. So now it's election day. This is the big moment. So the day of the election, you need to have the election script. Now, California State PTA has done all the hard work for you. They have a one-page back and front script that you simply read from. All of your lines are there. You don't have to have anything memorized, but make sure that you have a copy of the script accessible. Your parliamentarian needs one and the president needs one, because you both need to make sure you're on the same page. The slate needs to be also available for presenting. So that piece of paper where the nominating committee has signed off on the slate, you need to have that, because your nominating committee chair is going to read from that at your election meeting. And if your nominating committee chair isn't there, then somebody else needs to read that who was on the nominating committee. So you need to have that available. You will need your bylaws. You should have them with you all the time. Like I carry mine in my purse, but you need to have them available at your election. You will be reading several different sections of your bylaws, which is my favorite part of election night, but you will be reading those at your election. So make sure you have them handy. Our suggestion, as always, is to do a little bit of practice. So presidents, nominating chairs, and parliamentarians, read through the script before you get there so that you have a little bit of comfort with it. Like I said, you don't have to memorize it. It's there for you, but you want to be able to kind of understand the rhythm of things. And so if the first time you're looking at it is when you're actually reading it, you might get confused and stumble over your words. So just take a moment to look over that. And on the day of election, you need to do that final check. Do we have that membership list that shows everyone who is a member 30 days prior to our election? If so, you are ready to go. Now, this is kind of interesting because this presentation is normally done when we are in person. So this is going to be a little bit different. But when people sign into your meeting, you need to determine if they have been a member in good standing for 30 days or not. And usually in person, we give them some sort of a voting token, whether that's a card or a bracelet, or we put a little sticker on their hand or a little X, whatever it is. We need some way to determine our folks are eligible to vote. So in a Zoom meeting, what you could do is you could have your membership person, you could give them the editing rights, or the co-host rights, not editing rights, the co-host rights, and they could go and put a symbol next to everybody who is a member. Or what might be easier is a symbol next to folks who are ineligible to vote, and then just make sure that those people aren't sent the ballots. One thing that I actually think is much easier to do is using those membership lists and just checking the people who are members and only sending those people the link. Don't put it in the chat, just email it to the people from your membership list who are actually members. But again, this is a different space, so we're going to have to do a little bit of figuring out to make sure that we are sharing the ballots only with those folks who are registered to vote. You need to make sure you have quorum. If you don't have quorum, your elections cannot take place. So make sure that when you are planning your election meeting, you are taking into account the day, the time, and you are making sure that you have done great marketing so that everybody knows when they need to be there and why it's important. Again, read from the script. Don't ad lib. Even after all these elections I've done, I still read from the script. Don't pretend that you know what you're doing. Use the script. You don't want somebody to come to council and say our elections were done wrong and invalidate your elections because you weren't using the script. Just go step by step by step. I promise it will be easier. So here is what happens. This is the beautiful script that we have for you. Like I said, it's back and a front. It talks about what happens if there's a ballot vote and what happens if there isn't. So it covers all of your bases. So what's going to happen is the president is going to call the elections to order. And then the parliamentarian reads the bylaws, little hearts, love this part. And then your president calls for the chair of the nominating committee to present the slate. They read the list of candidates. And then the president goes position by position to see if anybody wants to run from the floor. This is key. You need to go one position at a time. So don't just read the whole slate. Say, Aaron Hester was nominated for the position of president. Is there anyone else who would like to run? And wait. And tell the people, if you're having this meeting on Zoom, tell them they can unmute and say something. They can put it in the chat, but make sure that you are giving them the space to do it. Don't just race through this part. This is where you really need to take a moment and pause and make sure that you have allowed for folks from the floor who want to throw their hat in the ring to throw their hat in the ring. After you do that, close nominations, and then you can continue to move down the line. Now, here's a suggestion. You might want to only do one position at a time, because if you think there's going to be a ballot vote, or if you think someone's going to run from the floor, if you open and close all of the positions, if somebody runs for a position, let's say they run for secretary and they don't get it, then there's no place else for them to go. They can't also run for historian or try to get a different position. So you might want to go one at a time, open it, close it, vote it, and then move on. But that, again, is entirely up to you. Keep in mind, presidents, you run this election. Your parliamentarian doesn't. So you don't get to give away the power for elections. Presidents, this is all on you. You get to run this. And we're going to talk about ballot votes in just a second. So like I said, people can self-nominate, or I can nominate a friend. I can say, hey, Leslie, I think you'd be great as president. I think you should do it. You have to check a couple things. Number one, make sure they're members and have been for 30 days. And number two, make sure they agree to it, right? If I throw Leslie under the bus and she doesn't want to do it, well, now we're in trouble, right? Because we have Leslie as a potential person for this office. And if she doesn't consent to accept the nomination, we're going to be in trouble if she wins. So make sure that they're a member in good standing, and also make sure that they accept the nomination. If they're not at your meeting, I would highly suggest taking a little time out and having someone call them or text them, or make sure, because like I said, the worst thing that could happen is you put someone in a position who's not willing to serve. So make sure that if someone gets nominated from the floor, you have their consent to accept the nomination and that they are a member in good standing. So if there's only one member for a position, well, they have to be a member, but one candidate for a position, you're allowed to take a voice vote. So if Aaron is the only person running for treasurer, because that's usually what happens with treasurer, then we can say all those in favor of having Aaron as our treasurer say aye, all those opposed say no. And if the ayes have it, then Aaron gets to be our next treasurer. However, if there are two people, if Aaron and Kelly are both running for the office of treasurer, we can't do a voice vote. We have to do a ballot. So when you're going to do a ballot, there are a couple steps you have to take. The first, the president will appoint tellers. Now, tellers is just a fancy way of saying ballot counters. So the president should appoint at least 3 people to count the ballots. Now, here are my recommendations. If you have any sense at all that your election is going to be contested, it is very wise to invite your council to participate in your elections, because council officers don't have a horse in the race, right? We don't sit on your board. So we can come in and be your unbiased tellers and help make sure that you are doing the ballot process perfectly. If you didn't know that you were going to have a contested election and you're surprised by it, that happens too. Pick 3 people to be your tellers that are vastly different. Preferably not your 3 best friends, preferably not all 2nd grade moms. You want to pick maybe a kindergarten parent, maybe one person from your current board, and a 4th grade mom who's super involved. You want to try and pick diverse people so that if someone comes and says, I don't think that those votes were correct, you can make sure that you have a diverse group of tellers who aren't co-conspiring to do something. Like I said, picking your 3 best friends is a terrible idea for tellers. Don't do that. If there is going to be a runoff and 2 candidates are going against each other, we suggest giving each of them 1 minute for a candidate statement. So obviously, if Erin was on the ballot, Kelly hasn't had a chance to talk to anybody about why she would make a great treasurer. So you give each of them 1 minute to share their virtues and their counting abilities to explain why they should be the next treasurer. Make sure, though, that you are being fair in this. Don't give one person 5 minutes and the other person 1. Everybody at once stops talking. So you have your parliamentarian there with a timer, and they say, oh, thank you so much, Erin. Your time is up. Kelly, 1 minute starting now. Boop. And now Kelly gets her minute. You need to make sure that you are fair and balanced in your elections. Normally, when we're in person, the tellers are the people who who pass out the ballots to our members who either have that bracelet or have the voting card. And then they collect them and count the ballots both as they hand them out and collect them back in. Unfortunately, in this digital space, if you're having your election still in a digital space, that's a little bit harder to do. But you share your membership list with the tellers, at least one of them. You don't have to share it with all of them. With one of the tellers, you have the tellers share out the ballot link, whether that's a Google form or a SurveyMonkey or whatever it is. And then you make sure that all 3 of your tellers are looking at the results. So make sure that they can all see that. So if it's a Google form, make sure it's shared with all 3 of them so that they can look and make sure that the results are valid. That's super important. Now, the tellers in a real election, when we are on, I don't know why I said real election, in an actual election when we're on campus, they're all real. They would go to a separate room to count the ballots. They would go to a real physical space. That's what I'm trying to say, to count the ballots. Here, they would go off to a breakout room. So if you're using Zoom, you would send them out to a breakout room, and the 3 of them would sit in there and they would see the results coming in. And they would then, after the election period is over, come back into the main Zoom room, and they would say to the president, Madam President or Mr. President, we have the results from the election, and you present. Now, this is kind of interesting. So if there's only one candidate, boom, bada bing. Mrs. Smith, congratulations, you're our next secretary. If there is a ballot, like I said, go on with your meeting while the tellers go out and do their thing. The tellers traditionally give a note to the chair so that the chair can announce, but in this space, I would highly suggest that your tellers be the one who present. So one of the tellers would say, congratulations, in the ballot, we had Erin Hester receive 10 votes and Kelly receive 5 votes. Erin Hester is the next treasurer. You need to, and this is something that's really hard for our volunteers sometimes, you do need to announce who got what results because it needs to be in your minutes. So I have personally been in an election where I lost by 1 vote. And it was recorded in the minutes as such. So just so you know, I've been there, I've lost the election, and it's gotten recorded in the minutes. So this is one of those hard things about a ballot vote, but we need those records in our minutes. The final thing that happens is the tellers move to destroy the ballots. Now, when we're on a physical campus, they would have all of these pieces of paper with certain names written on them. One of your tellers would take them off campus and get rid of them, whether that's throwing them in the fire, whether that's throwing them in their home trash can. Do not throw these away at school because sometimes trashes get dumped in multiple cans. And if you have someone who's feeling like, I don't think that they counted those ballots right. If they go in the wrong trash can and they come up with only half the ballots, then it's going to tell a different part of the story, right? So we want to make sure that the ballots are destroyed off campus. Now, in this virtual space, again, destroying the ballots is complex. But most of these computer programs, SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, you can simply delete the form and bloof, off it goes, and you never see it again. So make sure that one of your tellers is making as their last motion a motion to destroy the ballots. All right, so your elections are done. Whew, that was a lot. We talked about both in-person and virtual, so that presentation got kind of long. As soon as elections are over, woo, we have a board. Awesome. Couple things you need to do. Give everybody a high five. You have new officers. Transition can begin. So your current president starts meeting with your president-elect and sharing with them how the PTA runs at your school, sharing their procedure binders and all those things. Oh, I didn't update PTA on here. Goodness, I'm bad. You need to post your board elect on the website and in your newsletter and let people know these are going to be the officers for the next year. You need to maybe update your website. I think I said that, so that folks can see current officers and next year's officers just in case they want to serve on the upcoming board. You need to make sure that you input your PTA information into My PTEZ, formerly PTAEZ. I didn't catch this when I was updating this presentation. State PTA needs to know names, email, phone number, and address of the president. Of everybody else, we need at least the name and the email address, but we would love to know that information from every single person on your board, even the chair people. So as soon as the president-elect starts appointing those chair people, put them into My PTEZ so that we know how to get a hold of them. These are the lists that council, districts, and state all use to contact your officers. So it's really important that just as soon as the election is over, you go input those things into My PTEZ. And this is something that the sitting president does to help out the president-elect. So as soon as the election happens, current sitting presidents, you will go in and you will update for the 2021-2022 school year. You need to make sure that you're in the right tab on My PTEZ. But you need to update that roster. One great thing to do is have the next officer's shadow sit alongside the current officers. That might be easier to do when we're in person, but certainly if anyone is having committee meetings or things, make sure that that officer-elect is invited to be a part of that. You want them to feel welcomed, and you want them to help understand what their role is going to be when they take over after you. And like I said, those procedure books, those notebooks with all the information, with your job description, with all of your flyers that you've made, or all of your amazing work that you have done over the year and your predecessors, make sure that that is packaged up and given to the next officers. Now, especially important for secretaries and treasurers, those minute books, those treasures, notebooks and all those things, your QuickBooks computer logins, as soon as your term is over, those go on to the next person. These are not your personal items. These are property of the PTA. So you need to make sure to pass those things along. For me, I'm always excited when it gets some things out of my house, right? I don't need that secretary's book anymore. I'm passing that on to Leslie. She can take that and go with it. All right, so the new board, congratulations, you're a new officer. You guys can start meeting at any time. So these are actually official meetings. You should have minutes and you should have quorum if you're gonna make any big decisions. The board-elect works with the current board to create a calendar and a budget to present before the end of this school year for next school year. So make sure that you are partnering with your president, your treasurer, your president-elect, your treasurer-elect, and your principal to make sure all those things happen. The board-elect needs to look at the bylaws. You know how I feel about the bylaws. I love them, to make sure they still represent the organization. If not, the board-elect should start working on updating them. Now, the great thing is right now, at the moment we are recording this in December, we are still able to submit our bylaws electronically, and the process is going really quickly. Excuse me. So if your board-elect wants to update your bylaws, we can probably get them back either before the school year ends or at the very least, so that at your first meeting of the new term, you will be able to bring those to the association for approval, and you will be able to move forward with your updated bylaws. Remember, the new board-elect does not take office until July 1st, which means you can't sign contracts, you can't spend money, you can't go to the bank and change those signatures until July 1st or later. So don't jump the gun and say, woo, we were elected, it's April 1st, let's all go and run over to the bank and change signatures. You can't do that. We need to let the current board edit that out. We need to let the current board finish out their term so that they have a really successful finish. And then as soon as July 1 hits, you can start those processes. So congratulations to our board-elect. And now I'm going to pass it on to our district president, Madam Erin Hester.
All righty, thank you, Heather. Oh, Founders Day. So Founders Day is February 17th, and it's a day in which we celebrate the legacy and work of our founders, Alice Burney, Phoebe Hearst, and Selena Butler, to better the lives of every child in education, health, and safety. It's a time to renew the dedication to the purpose of PTA, to be a powerful voice for all children, a relevant resource to all parents, and a strong advocate for public education. This Founders Day celebration was created in 1910 by Mrs. David O. Mears, a charter member of the National Congress of Mothers. National Congress of Mothers changed names in 1925 to become the National Congress of Parents and Teachers, and then in 1970 they combined with National Congress of Colored People to become the National PTA, which is what it is today. The vision of PTA's founders has been realized in many ways, and now it's up to the present PTA members, which is us, to continue the vision. Next slide. All right, so some ways we can celebrate is with a free will offering. Now, if you take a free will offering, which is just a collection of donations, those donations actually go up, they remit up the channels, but they benefit the entire organization. CAPTA returns a quarter of that to your district PTA, which is us, and half of it goes to national PTA. So CAPTA keeps a quarter of it as well. All those funds are used for training, for promoting, and supporting units and all the work that we do throughout our PTA. Other ways we can celebrate is through maybe a slideshow of the activities your PTA has done through the year. We can present honoring service awards, which we'll talk about in a moment, to your volunteers and your staff. Those can be done during your Founders Day. They can also be done later in the year at a volunteer dinner or volunteer event. Just depends on when your PTA decides to do honorary service awards. Your PTA could start a Hall of Fame at your school to recognize past officers. There's lots of ways in which you could celebrate Founders Day. Next slide, please. So honorary service awards. Honorary service awards are awarded throughout the year. Like I said, they can be awarded during Founders Day. They can be awarded later. They're a unique way to recognize your volunteers. Sorry, I lost train of thought. When you order an honorary service award through CAPTA Store, all those proceeds are used to support our scholarships and grants. Sorry. So it's important that if you do honorary service awards, to order them through the CAPTA Store, because as I said, those support our scholarships and grants, which are something that our high schoolers can apply for. Volunteers can apply for grants and scholarships. So edit that part out. I don't even know. Anyways, honorary service awards are a great way to just recognize your volunteers for all the hard work they do. Very special person award is usually your first award that you would give out. Honorary service would be if they go above and beyond. All these can be explained on California PTA website. But as you go, continuing service is just that. You continue, they're continuing service, outstanding service. You have teacher awards, administrator awards. A Golden Oak Award is kind of like the big last hurrah for somebody who may be leaving your board or has been there a really long time. So all these are available on the California State PTA store. And I believe that is all I have for right now.
Hello all, my name is Amy and I am proud to be your 34th District Historian. On the screen, as you see, each year PTA units, councils, and districts are asked to report their volunteer hours on the annual historian report. This helps us when we're advocating on behalf of children and families at the state, local, and national level. When we can show how many very involved parents are in their local schools. The report needs to be completed by either you, the historian, or your president and submitted to your council in the early spring. When the form is due before the school year is over, you need to estimate what hours you will be doing throughout the rest of the year. This form is a very simple to complete, but you need to share, sorry. PTA keeps you busy. This form is very simple to complete, but you will need some information that you might need to know offhand. You need to know your district number, which is 34th District, and we're proud to have you, and your state PTA number, which can be found on the cover sheet of your bylaws. If you need help finding this number, you can reach out to your council president and they can help you. Next slide, please. Thank you. As you try to compile your hours, remind your volunteers, PTA volunteers, and other parents who give their time to the school that at every minute that they spend volunteering counts. Sending emails, attending meetings, time making copies, or cutting out things at home, time setting up and cleaning up an event, including the event itself. You guys make it awesome. Please make sure that you let us know that you're doing those amazing hours. You give up so much of your time to your school, and the best it can be, make sure that those minutes are recorded in this report. If you use the QR code on the slide, you can see a pretty complete list of the things that count on your annual historian report. Slide, thank you. We know that this is a lot to keep track of throughout the year. So here are a few ideas to keeping track of your hours as you go along. If you haven't been doing this year, there is no time like the present to begin. As you begin this transition to new officers, you should also suggest consistent tracking to the income historian and president. Kelly, Heather, that's all you.
All right, so one more thing we want to talk to you about is convention and the legislation conference. So the cool thing is both are being held virtually this year, which makes it so much easier to attend. I want to let you know that the legislation conference is being held February 8th and 9th in 2021 at 2 different times during each day. So from 2 to 4, and then there's a little break, and then from 6 to 8 on both February 8th and February 9th. This is one of the great conferences that a lot of people don't know about. So this is where you learn about PTA advocacy at all levels, at your school level, at the local level, whether that's your city, your county, at the state level, and at the national level. They have guest speakers. They have interactive activities where you learn more about how you can be a good advocate. You learn about the advocacy efforts of the state and national PTA. And you also learn how to actually go to your legislator and talk to them about these issues. Now, for me, I was always really scared by the word advocacy. And every time somebody would say, you should go to the legislation conference, I was so nervous because when I hear that, I think of like people carrying signs and protesting in a march and going and talking in this big, office in the middle of the Capitol to somebody who's very intimidating. And I was so nervous about it. So I went to my first ledge conference probably 4 or 5 years ago. and found that it was nothing like that. It was such a great experience. I got to interact with leaders from across the state. I got to hear from the Speaker of the House. I got to hear from some other policy folks about what is happening in our laws that relate to our children and our families. And it was fascinating. So I have now been multiple times, and I can tell you that every time I am learning more amazing things from our Ledge team. But we really hope that even if you don't have a Ledge chair at your school, that you will consider sending some of your families or some of your PTA members, because this is a really, really great opportunity. Also, high schoolers are welcome. So if you have a high schooler who's really passionate about either making some policy change, or they're maybe interested in going into working with the government at some point, this is a great place for them to come and start hearing from these experts and learning what it takes. So we encourage you as well as your high schoolers to participate. And now Kelly's going to tell you a little bit about convention.
Hi, thanks, Heather. A lot of the reasons Heather talked about going to the Ledge conference carries right over into convention. And I know convention is going to look a little bit different this year. In the past, it's been a great time for you and part of your PTA team to get away for a weekend, spend time bonding, but don't count it out this year. And I want to give you 5 really important reasons why you should attend convention, even if it's going to be virtually this year. And the dates will be finalized probably soon, and you'll be able to work it out hopefully with your team and figure out who can go. But number 1, you get inspired. It's the place where leaders go to be inspired, understand the issues that PTA is facing today, and learn the skills to be powerful and effective leaders and advocates. It's also a great place for professional development. Convention classes are the best way for your PTA officers to get leadership training that they need to have a successful year, and for you as returning officers to advance your training. Another great thing that won't be lost, even though we won't be in person, is that you're still going to be able to network with other leaders. You're going to get to know other PTA leaders from around the state, our council, our district and region, and you can even spend some time setting up to bond with some of your own board members, and especially your new board members. And last but not least, you're going to get new ideas. You're going to learn about successful programs that other groups are doing, other activities that other PTAs are doing. Hopefully there'll be some component where you can virtually meet with some vendors, maybe develop new ideas for virtual school assemblies and field trips. If we're not back in school, if we are back in school, you'll have those opportunities to talk to vendors about programs you can bring directly to your school. And last but not least, I think this is really important, especially this year, validation. PTA leaders work hard for the PTA from the unit level on up to the state and national level. At convention, even if it's virtual, you're still going to learn about the mission of making every child's potential a reality and meet others with a common passion for improving the lives of all children. So I hope you come. I hope it helps you feel validated for the work that you're doing this year. When you might feel a little bit unseen, you're not. We appreciate everything that you're doing at your unit level. And last but not least, who can go? Check your bylaws, as Heather was talking about earlier. Have a copy of your bylaws. Know who is in your bylaws, who usually gets to attend. It's something to discuss with your board. And if it is not in your budget currently as a line item to get your folks to be paid for the convention costs, it's not too late to look at that budget and create that line in your budget so that your board, several members, your president or president-elect at least, to be able to go to convention.
Awesome, Kelly. So make sure that you are thinking about the legislative conference and also convention, and make sure that you are making some plans to send some members of your current board. It is an event not to be missed, and we want to see you there. All right, Leslie, I think it's back to you.
Okay, we hope that you have all learned a lot tonight. And If you have any questions, you can use the chat feature. We will hang around for a little while and make sure that we get all of those answered. Otherwise, please visit us at 34thpta.org, where this will be posted, along with many other webinars and resources that we have for you. And also follow us on Facebook for any other information. Thanks again for joining us tonight.